Yo, grab a dreidel and a yarmulke, cause it's Hanukkah and it's Hanukkah.
Getting down for 8 straight nights. That's how we do on the festival of life.
Throw your hands up for good, the chosen Pacifico holiday, to which there is no equal. While the goy.
All right, I have to stop that. It's like a minute and a half long, but we're going to skip that. So welcome to the Gooners podcast. This is a special episode where we are probably not all that happy at the moment, but we'll get started. Ryan Rocastle, thank you for joining us. We're going to talk a little bit more about the current state of affairs than we did when you joined us a week or so ago.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Owen, we've got you heading up the questions today. If you missed it, go back and watch Tom's Gooner podcast, the Gooner Talk. Frank hour-and-a-half discussion about the situation. We're gonna try to cover some of the same points, but with Owen's special flair. So
I suppose it's a dire host for a dire situation, really, and I just want to state very, very early on to this podcast that Ryan, this comment was put in by David before you had even come into the stream backstage, so that's aimed directly at us, not at you. You'll not fall into the same bracket as us. No, but lads, we'll dive right in, and Ryan, I'll come to you first, buddy. The lineup, it's something that we touch on every week. It's often the first question always, but I think it's sort of never more evident than now. To me, Mike will tell you we're in a WhatsApp group together, and I said before the game had started that with that lineup, regardless of what the result was, my concerns had grown. There seemed to be a refusal to change from Mikel Arteta. What did you make of the lineup, and did it concern you as much as it did me before the game kicked off?
I mean, I personally, I would have made at least a couple more changes. I can see why he didn't, because I think once you start playing, when you consider that, Gabriel and Xhaka, they're two players. I think they're 20. One's 22, one's 19, 20. Mm-hmm. So you've already got two youngsters in there as well. If you were to say what everyone else wanted, I feel like what everyone else wanted to play, sort of 7 or 8. If that goes wrong, then it's like where'd you go from that? Do you know what I mean? You lose if you lose that game, and you've thrown the youngsters in as well. It's not good for their development. Mm-hmm. And then you'll have all the fans saying, so he's gone with players that he trusts. But again, it's the most disappointing thing of the whole season has been the senior players. They just completely let him down. They completely let the fans down. And I can see why you were concerned, because I felt the same as well. But maybe that now is that for a few of them, and they can have no complaints.
Yeah, and I think I completely understand what you're saying about how it could have a negative effect on the development of some of our youth players, and I'm not saying, and I'll agree. There's been some ludicrous statements of just play the kids, and to me that is, like I said, it's ludicrous. But to include maybe one or two, the likes of Emile Smith-Rowe, the likes of Balogun, to try and rectify these creative and goal-scoring problems that we seem to be having. But something you touched on, Ryan, there was that the senior players are just repeatedly letting Mikel Arteta down. And Mike, 3 people that have been called into question, probably on numerous occasions in recent weeks especially, is Granit Xhaka, who we'll touch on in more detail later, Hector Bellerin and Willian. They seem to be players that people would say have been probably given more chances than they've earned. I don't want to come across as too strong here. I'll be honest, I'm absolutely livid after that. But I would actually say that Willian has probably proven himself to be one of the worst transfers that we have ever made, which is fucking insane when you think of some of the ones that we've made before. We literally signed a guy that had a broken back. But do you think that the responsibility falls off those players? We said to let him down there, but really, when people are repeatedly letting you down, eventually the responsibility falls off the people who are being picked and starts to fall on the man who's continuously picking them.
Yeah. And Ryan, I've struggled with this too, because, you know, the thought does occur to me, you know, if you start, let's just, for the sake of lack of better words to use, let's just say we start the Europa League squad in the Premier League. We flip Thursdays and Sundays and like you said, start 7 of the teenagers in the game, and it goes south. Do you destroy them? Does it destroy them, or are they just learning on the job and they're buoyed by being shown the confidence? You know, it's kind of in how it's done. You know, are you saying, well, what the heck, we might as well just start these guys even though they're not ready, or are we saying, you know what, we're going to reward some guys who have put in hard work on Thursdays and who have shown a desire to run their asses off for 90 minutes? I'm caught in two minds as far as that's concerned, because I don't want to destroy these players' confidence by sicking them on the, you know, I wouldn't have done that against Spurs. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't do that against Chelsea. I would have done that against Burnley. Mm-hmm. And that's and maybe not 7, but, like, you know, make it based on what you've done for us lately, not based on what you have accomplished over your career. So, you know, I do want to kind of ask you, Ryan, I mean, is it possible that a player like Emil Smith-Rowe or Balogun getting a start over Aubameyang actually helps him, even if he doesn't get many chances in the long run?
Well, but then you got to look at the squad as well. I'll tell you something, Mike. Really interesting thing I did today. I went back and I looked at Unai Emery, an interview he did. Yeah, he did it in the Guardian in May, right? And I remember reading it at the time, and I remember thinking, this guy's just full of excuses. He's looking for another job. He's trying to. You know,
I remember that one.
He's trying to think, and then I read it today, and it's scary reading it, because all of a sudden I'm looking at him thinking, actually, he had a point in what he says. I'll just go through a couple of the points. He talks about when, after that game in Baku, in that summer, he lost 4 players that he thought were influential positively in the dressing room. Ramsey, Cech, Monreal, and Koscielny. So he lost those 4 players, and that, and loads of other things. But that kind of stuck out to me, because he said after that, when the new season started and you came to a difficult period, you know, that he felt began when we lost to Sheffield United 1-0. And he said that was basically, yeah, you've got it. You brought it up. I've just seen that. Did you know that I was gonna? No.
We have technology on the podcast where one of our good guests come on. It's voice activated. So yeah. You don't get that on the Gooner Talk TV.
He said that, yeah, and so you're thinking, if the players have already turned on a manager, and also under Arsene Wenger, I wouldn't say they turned on him. I know there's a bit different, but you'll say there were definitely issues with him. With some of the players that are here now, Emery, even, and then I saw a quote online from Freddie Ljungberg, and he said, "Not much will change under Arteta because these players don't care enough." And I just remember thinking about that at the time, and I was like, "Well, that's that. Okay, let's see how it goes." But they're spot on, and for me, that's why I think Arteta's got such a hard job in balancing. Sort of, you look at our squad from the outside. If I was to look at it, say, as a Chelsea, I wouldn't think that this was a problematic squad. It doesn't strike me as, but when you actually read further into it, you start to see that there's definitely something not right that happens at the training ground there. And I just think Arteta's caught in between trying to balance a squad of egos, and giving, maybe he's quite reluctant to play too many of the youngsters because of how that could backfire. Whether that's strong management or not from him, that's definitely a difficult situation to deal with. Unai Emery, whatever you say about him, he'd come from PSG. He dealt with massive egos there. For him to sort of say, that month when he was between last October and November was one of the most difficult and loneliest months of his career, kind of shows you something, right?
And I think, funny, I was literally just thinking about this about an hour ago, and in my opinion, the only difference between the situation Unai Emery was in and the situation that Mikel Arteta finds himself in now, I think the reason that Mikel Arteta has got slightly more time without the pressure mounting to where it is now is the fact that his communication is so good. The way that he presents himself, is the likability factor. I think that has sort of bought him a lot of time, and I can tell by
seems to be going great with Luis.
Yeah, well, we'll cover. We're going to dive into solely Mikel Arteta a bit later on in the show, but I can already maybe tell Ryan that you probably have a bit more of a positive outlook, and I know there's a lot of sort of accumulating factors that come into play making that decision and stuff. But even a question I'll throw back to you here, Ryan, because you're somebody who has obviously grown up just surrounded by football and professionals, is that when I look at this side, and I was watching that last night, what really wound me up was there's no clear playing style that we have. We look like a pub team at the minute. There's literally no structure, no real tactical approach. It's route one down the wings. I actually made the joke last night that we were trying to out Burnley. This might be a difficult question, but what do you think our playing style is, or what possible solutions do we have for the lack of playing style that we have been displaying?
Well, I think as you can probably tell, I am a big fan of Arteta. And what I'll say to defend him, is when I worked at QPR, right, in their media department, something that really struck me actually was that the only time that the players went through that I'd say that there was a lot of detailed tactical training and on playing style was the first 5 weeks of pre-season. That was every single day. You could see they worked on shape, they worked on the things they do with and without the ball. And when it got into the season, something that struck me was how little that they did that during the weeks. Because in the championship is relentless. It's like you have your game on Saturday. They recover on Sunday. Monday you do, some light work, some gym, some massages, whatever. Then Tuesday you might do a little bit of work, but a lot of detailed analysis, looking at the opposition. And then you travel in the evening. Wednesday's the game. Thursday you prep. Thursday you recover. Friday you prep for the next one. Saturday you go. And the only time, honestly, the only time that I felt like that the manager could properly get down to his work was when either it was that pre-season or was it during the international breaks. This season is quite like a championship season. It's just there's 3 games most weeks. There's not that much time to work on your playing style. I know it sounds like I'm making excuses, but when you think our season went till August the 1st, and then the Community Shield was the 28th, I think. Then you think back to when we were in lockdown. But when we were in lockdown, the players weren't training. They weren't coming in, and they weren't, So he hasn't actually had that much time to work with the players. I know the style, it should be a bit better than what it is. I agree with you to an extent that at the minute it's hard to see what we're trying. I personally, my opinion is that when we played 5 at the back or 3 at the back, whatever, it was easier to see. Now people didn't like that because they thought it was defensive. I remember Arteta said Aubameyang's natural position was from the left wing. People were up in arms about it. When I saw the reaction online for him saying that, what he meant by that is his natural position was coming from the left and playing in between the right back and right centre back, that channel.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so what I think's happened personally is that Arteta's actually come away in recent weeks from what he wants to do. I think he wants to play. I think with the players he has now, not long term, but at this minute, I think he wants to play that 3-4-3. He wants to play out from the back. Now, again, that you can question the decision making because there's no doubt in my mind that Martinez is better for that fit than Leno was. But again, we don't know exactly if Martinez has come in demanding to play, in August, then Arteta's gone, hold on, mate, I'm not guaranteeing anyone. Mm-hmm. And Martinez has gone out the door, then what can he do? Mm-hmm. But I think, sorry, I've gone off.
No, go on ahead, buddy.
I think he wants, in an ideal world, he wants to play out from the back. He wants to create chances. I don't think he wants to create solely crosses, as we're seeing. I think we're seeing, as in, by that I mean crosses to the head. I think he wants to create cutbacks, like we saw a lot of times, when we were playing well in lockdown. I think he wants to create positions from wide to create chances, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because when Liverpool play and Robertson and Alexander-Arnold are banging in, low crosses, no one's saying Firmino is not good in the air, or Mane is not good in the air, or Salah's not good in the air, are they? They're just, because they're scoring all these goals. But because we're going on this patch at the minute, it's like everything now, even things that I think Arteta, that people deep down probably know what he means. People are getting on his back a bit. And so if I was to make a suggestion to him, I'd say go back to that fiver. That's what you want to play. The players look a little bit more comfortable with it. Aubameyang from the left, for me, he looked better there.
But even there, when it's funny because I actually think that, and don't worry, go back and watch a couple of podcasts from a few weeks ago. I 100% was behind Arteta, but things have crept into my mind which are making me question that a lot. And I think that
you've been questioning a lot of things recently.
Oh yeah, question everything. What was I going to say? No, basically, I think that our natural style should be better. I think if you sent those players out uncoached, the natural style of those players should be better, which makes me think that they're sort of being shackled structurally. They're being overcoached. And Aubameyang's a prime example of that, because whilst he's been sitting up front, it's almost to me like he's been told to just sit and wait on crosses to come into the box, where Aubameyang of the sort of latter years, we would have seen, much like Thierry Henry, is drift into that channel between their right centre back and their right back and make that diagonal run into the channels, and he just doesn't seem to be doing that. Do you think that maybe, much like we hear from players that play for Pep Guardiola, everything is coached even in the final third? Do you think he's maybe putting too much emphasis on sort of positioning, and that our players are basically being shackled too much?
You asking me that or Ryan? Because I don't know the answer to that. Because
I'll ask Ryan then.
Well, I mean, who could possibly know? I mean, we're not privy to training sessions to know what they're doing. I would take Ryan's word over how a team with games that come thick and fast is, how much time there is to really be able to to enforce that sort of thing. But
we're not even talking about. We're not even talking about overcomplicated tactics or sort of the fine details of the game. We're talking about the basics, and I know you laugh because I repeat this saying so much, but it's because there's such a lack of it. There's nobody that drops the shoulder and turns and releases the ball forward. There's nobody that picks the ball up when there's space in front of them and drives into space trying to commit a man. It just doesn't happen, and it hasn't been happening, and whether that's a confidence thing from the players or whether it's a coaching thing, or
they don't look like they want to be out there playing with each other.
I just can't see that so many of our so many players within our squad have all conveniently hit bad form at the same time. I just can't get my head around that.
Well, when that happens, you have to look at other things, because these players are good enough to be in the top half of the table at least, if not sixth, seventh, eighth. Even with the players that need to go, we're better than we are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't. I'm a results person. I can't get into the details of how you get to the results, but when you keep getting the same result over and over again, like everyone wants to say,
Mm-hmm.
Something needs to change. And to me, it's some level of saying, if you have 3 consecutive games where you don't impact the game in the slightest, we're going to give you, we're going to move you to the less important game of that week, which for the next few weeks, we don't have any of those anymore, like we did in the latter stages of the Europa League group stage. But, and we're going to give, again, not to go back to the well too often, but we're going to give some of those players who A, deserve a chance, and B, might actually put forth an effort for 90 straight minutes, and C, need to be made aware that they're part of the future plans of this club, as opposed to, doesn't matter what you do in training or in Europa League or FA Cup early rounds, you're not getting the call when it comes to Saturday and Sunday against the big boys.
Yeah. It's a tricky one, but look, we'll cover some more of those sort of things in detail a bit later on. But we'll try to get back to the game here. Who's this? Let's see, Mike Hernandez. I don't know.
It's a podcaster's curse, because you feel like you have to answer the question.
This is a man, Mike Hertz. This is a guy.
I don't know the answer, and here's why I don't know the
Arsene Wenger for 2 decades. That's the result of that. But no, lads, we'll go back to the game, and Ryan, I'll jump back to you with this. Granit Xhaka red card, just needless. And you talk about this game had enough pressure on it as it was, and for one of our supposed captains of the club to turn around and do something stupid like that. What did you make of the situation? And ultimately, do you think this could be Granit Xhaka's time being up at the club?
Look at that. I'm going to do a mic here and say I don't know to the answer to your last one, because I thought maybe after the whole Crystal Palace thing last year, that was his last game, and then, to be honest, he had up until recently recovered his personal situation. I remember after that game against Fulham, the first game of the season, they played really well, and I think the official account put up a picture and said something like "the General," Granit Xhaka, and under it was just full of comments saying, like love hearts, and this guy, like, so. But then, I think what's happened, if you want, this is what I think's happened though. My personal thing is, I think a couple of weeks ago, against Leeds, do you remember at the end of that game? And he cuddled that Leeds player, and Tierney was it. And I remember Martin Keown said, "What's probably riled Tierney up is seeing Xhaka cuddling." And I remember he was getting some stick about that. And I think he's thought somehow that, since then I've seen him it happened against Spurs as well. He got riled up with another player, and I feel like since then it's just that, like, it's almost like the message has been like, to show leadership, you've got to go and start. Let's go back to that incident, I'm actually more than okay with him taking the yellow card for that foul, because for the first time in so long, for a 10-15 minute spell, we were really cramping the opposition. We were on top of them, looking dangerous, went forward. I think, rather, he was obviously out of position because we were trying to go on the attack. So he fouls the guy, and for me, I was thinking, okay, you've done your job. For whatever reason, it's like, granted, you fouled the player. It's a yellow card in 99.9% again. Take the yellow card and run back. But then he starts mouthing off with, and then I think what's happened is that he thinks that
Westwood.
the guy's come over and the guy's tripped, right? And it's tripped him up, and he thinks that the guy has tripped him up, so he's obviously lost his head. It's just he shouldn't be in. You should have took that yellow card and been back in your position.
Mm-hmm.
And if you did that, none of that would have happened. None of that whole little. And then from that,
But how many times have we seen this from him, though?
But somebody actually put a comment into the chat. Is it Sam? Says that Granit Xhaka has an attitude problem. I actually think that Granit Xhaka doesn't do well under pressure. I think when things get tough and the pressure's on, that he can buckle and those flaws come out within his personality, which is the last thing you want from a leader on your pitch. You know, that's the time that you need them to shine through. I don't know, man. That's
a very good point.
I see it as sometimes Granit tries to overstep leadership and it gets into I've gone too far, and that's where we see him falling into these, where the games, you liken it to like over here in hockey, right? Sometimes there's a player on the pitch or on the ice who just fights with someone else to get your team going. Sometimes I feel like Granit tries to step up and be that figure, and then he just gets red card, and you're like,
slightly different sport, though. Yeah, there's a
like
slightly different dynamic. For that.
Yeah, he just went a little bit too far. That's how I see him sometimes, because his teammates love him, the coaching staff loves him. He must do just wonders in the locker room and on the training ground, but for some reason, every season he has just one or two moments where you're like, "What are you doing?"
But to be honest with you, like, and don't worry, this isn't aimed at you, Andy. But I'm really sick of hearing that. Is that he's great for the locker room? He's great around people like him. That doesn't matter a shit. It's a football club. It's not a fucking social club.
Doesn't mean he should be starting. Doesn't mean he should be starting.
No, and if you look, I think I was listening to Arseblog earlier. It's this really, really small sort of, niche Arsenal podcast. But I was listening to Arseblog, and I think that that Andrew made the point that the decline of Arsenal, the rapid decline that we have went into, corresponds with Granit Xhaka becoming a mainstay in our midfield. And it's that I don't think he's a bad player. I just think that some players aren't suited to the Premier League. I think he would probably do well in Italy. He probably would do well in Germany again.
He needs to go to some Borussia. I don't care if it's Borussia Cluj or Borussia Young Boys.
Just Borussia the fuck out of here.
Borussia somewhere. He needs to go back.
He until Partey came, no player has dislodged him from this starting 11. Mm-hmm. Now Partey has walked in. He's not going to see the light of day for Arsenal. Mm-hmm. So right now is the right time to ship him off and sell him. And like we just said, there's a club out there where he will do very well, and we could probably get some decent money for him. Not on a huge wage packet, but I completely agree with you, Owen. Just because you're good for the locker room doesn't mean you should be starting, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't think Granit Xhaka is a squad player. I do think he will fit into a team where he plays 90 minutes every match. He's just not at the level to do that for Arsenal. The Premier League is too much of a league for him.
I agree with that.
What's the old saying? Thanks for the memories, Granit, but it's time to say goodbye. And
but I think Ryan pointed out before.
No, I think it's time to say goodbye.
Yeah, but when you can't, I do feel bad for the player from the fact that when he came, everyone thought he was going to be this defensive midfielder.
Yeah, he never was that.
He was never that ever in his career.
It was always round. It was always square pegs and round holes with him.
Definitely,
tactically. Personality wise, league fit.
Did you guys talk about Ozil yet? Just curious.
No, but you appeared the second that Owen mentioned Xhaka, though. You came bursting on the scene.
Yeah,
I got a text from Ryan saying, "Can you save me from these two ass hats?"
Yeah.
Well, you'd fall out with him because I know you're a touchy subject, Andy, is that when people prefer Martinez over Leno, and you're surrounded by three of them now. So,
well, you're all
don't include me in that.
You can have your own opinions, but you're an idiot for having
it. He's such a dick.
I know, and he was always a dick.
No, but we'll move on to another player. Mike, I feel like I have to give you something to answer here. Aubameyang,
I started that before you actually said it.
Yeah. No, but the own goal. I don't think you can touch on it in too much detail because it is what it is. It's just unlucky. I think that's all it is. But this poor run of form continues again. And we were talking earlier about, leaders in the dressing room and stuff. This is a guy who's been wearing the captain's armband, and still, we've touched on this before, poor body language, poor displays, a sort of, even in them social media videos and stuff, which are fucking horrible, his demeanour's just totally shot. Do you think that, I mentioned this before, but is he regretting signing an extension for this club? Not in terms of finance, but in terms of...
no, he's certainly not regretting it financially. I don't think he's... I don't think Aubameyang is one of our bigger problems right now. I think he could do with a game off. Mm-hmm. I think he could do with having to fight for his spot. No one should be above that in this club. But I think he can still find his form. I just think it has to do not solely to who's surrounding him, because that was always the thing with Ozil is, he's surrounded by these people. He can't, you're not giving him anything to work with. No, he's in an awful run of form right now, and his confidence is as low as it's probably ever going to be. But we know that he's done this before when things have gone poorly around him. He's shrunk. He's needed some sort of confidence booster. And, maybe just mixing up the surrounding players around him, not having it be every week you're going to start and we're looking for you to finally break out of this. Maybe he gets the midweek game and we see somebody else start against Brighton, not him. Yeah. He can very quickly get it back is what I'm saying, but it's not going to happen from just plugging him in, week out into the same spot where everybody's focused on how poor of a run of form he's in. I think he probably just needs a cleansing and get back his confidence. But there are other players that can play striker for us.
I think. Do you want to know what that? I don't think people give enough credit to how much weight that captain's armband, bears, especially in a situation like this here, where the club's going through a time of turmoil. But Ryan, do you believe in? And I know it could be a strange question. Do you believe in stripping a player of captaincy? And do you think that could rock the boat a bit too much at a time like this?
I mean, what Mike was saying, I honestly think he himself is a bit shocked with his form, because he hasn't gone this many games in his life. He hasn't gone, I think up until this season, he hadn't gone like 3 games since he's been with Arsenal without scoring the net. So I think he himself is struggling. Like we expect footballers to be robots sometimes, and they're not. And if you're going through a crisis, you can see as well that the pressure is on him. You look at him. Me and my friend always say, like, before he takes a penalty, my God, if you look at his face, it's like the most unconfident. But like it looks like the whole world is on his shoulders before, and now he's trying to. You see that in everything he's doing. My personal opinion, Owen, is that there's a player at left back for Arsenal who is perfect for the captaincy. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't take the captaincy from Aubameyang if I didn't think there was someone else who could be perfect. But in Tierney, I really believe that he is the future captain of Arsenal. And I look at how he was yesterday, and I look at, people ask him, why did you sign? What's the best bit about living in London, playing for Arsenal? He said,
and I tell you what, do you want to know when I know that Mike has got a fantastic guest? Is when the guest does the segue and on to the next question for me. It's just fucking seamless, Ryan. Absolutely seamless. So Mike, I actually sent you a link earlier to Kieran Tierney's interview. But Ryan, before Mike, just while Mike's pulling that up, I actually think that I agree with you 100%. I think if there was ever a player to fit captaincy at Arsenal, it should be Kieran Tierney. I think Gabriel could be in with a shout, but he's just maybe a little too inexperienced yet. But for me, Kieran Tierney was the positive light yesterday. I think that Kieran Tierney almost single-handedly dragged us to getting a point yesterday. He was just very unfortunate in doing so. What kind of an impact do you think he had on the game? And not only that, but an impact in the club in general, because I think if there's anyone to shift the culture in Arsenal player-wise, it's a player like Kieran Tierney.
Well, yeah, 100%. I mean, when he came in, I think, was it David Ornstein? I think it was David Ornstein who said he ruffled a few feathers by the way he tackled in training. And I like about him, Kieran Tierney, is he doesn't, for me, he doesn't look, he's not, what he's trying to do is I feel like he's trying to become a top player for Arsenal Football Club. And that's it. And that's what he wants to, he just wants to play for a club that, you've got to remember, he left. Yeah, my sister's boyfriend is a huge Celtic fan. He told me that Tierney was such a fan of that club, Celtic. For him to leave and make that decision to come and play for Arsenal, and that's all he ever says when people ask him about it. That's all he wants to do. Is he doesn't care about anything else. He wants to be successful at Arsenal. I like the fact he hasn't come from, he's not kind of come from the other times with Wenger or that's not with him. It's kind of like, for me, it feels like a new dawn with him. Yeah, and I think has leadership skills naturally in terms of he fights for the badge. I've seen him. We saw him the other day get annoyed at Leeds. I've seen him stick up for Martinelli, and he just leads by example.
Yeah, in comparison to Xhaka, that's the right aggression that you want to see from a player. And I remember him. It was only a couple of weeks after we first signed Kieran Tierney, and I actually, what often happens in Ireland is people follow their English team and then they follow either Celtic or Rangers, and I would follow Celtic quite closely. And so I was well aware of Kieran Tierney, and I was blown away when I went over to one of the Arsenal matches in the pub after, and I was telling people about Kieran Tierney, this new lad we've signed, new left back, and nobody really knew who he was. And I was like, this kid is a wizard, and his attitude. And I think something that it has done is highlight that we should not only target players for their ability, but their mentality as well. And I think the club have maybe caught on to that too. But we're going to highlight some of that mentality. And for me, something that I've been pissed off with both Aubameyang, Edu, everybody throughout the club is that they have been sort of hiding in the shadows while we're going through this rough patch. But Kieran Tierney, I think, come out and tackled it head on, and I actually think Michael read through it now, but that he actually called out a lot of the players within the squad indirectly through this interview. So, Mike, I'll hand it over.
Yeah, I mean, for those that are listening on audio only. Comes out after the game and says it's us players that need to take responsibility for this. It's on us and nobody else. We've got a great manager. We believe in him 100%. The blame is on us, nobody else. It's not good enough. There's no way to disguise it. It's terrible, to be honest. It's not what we are, not where we are as a club. It's not what the fans deserve. It's not what the manager deserves. It's not what the board and that deserve. Everything is going wrong. We're working on the right things. We're doing the right things in training. We're working as hard as we can, but just things that can go wrong are going wrong. This happens in football. It's the lowest we've probably felt in all of our careers, and nobody's going to help us except ourselves. So we just need to keep believing, be positive. I know it's hard. I know the fans deserve much better, and all I can do is apologize to every single one of the supporters during these tough times. Again, I know I sound like a broken record, but it's that kind of statement means more to me than 50% of the talent in somebody's body. Because you could objectively say that maybe Pepe or Willian is a more complete footballer than Reece Nelson at this point in their career. You could say that. You could also say the opposite. but there's no, but when it comes down to, the attitude and look, talk can be cheap sometimes, but can also be very, very valuable. In this case,
it's different coming from him, innit? It feels different.
It is. And when, again, I am just a broken record today, but when George Graham comes in and identifies 6 or 7 players who were just kind of shiftlessly, resting on their laurels, I think, at the club, or were maybe a little bit past their time, and just immediately identified them and got them out of the club and started promoting people who very much kind of had the Kieran Tierney attitude, if not necessarily the proven goods on the pitch yet. We know what he did in 87, 88, and 89 to fill that lineup with people who wore the badge with honor and pride. And that's what needs to happen. I don't know if every single one of these young guys, I don't know whether Matthew Smith is that guy, or whether Daniel Ballard is that guy, or even Emile Smith-Rowe or Joe Willock yet. But, we need, like someone said in the chat, in fact, it was your nemesis, Chris, a starting 11 of Tierney's would be a dream come true. I'd take a starting 11 of people who were 70% of what Tierney is, as far as attitude and fight at this point.
And it's something, and this is where myself and Ryan agreed, but now I think that we're going to start to have a little fork in the road now. But what I was going to say, with Kieran Tierney, that's something that massively aggravated me, is hearing that from a player who is literally through the door. And I actually think that come January, we're going to see who really wants to be here. If it stays like this,
Aubameyang should have said that. Not Kieran Tierney.
100%, but not even that. Not only, but I'll go on to that in a second. But in January, if we're still going through turmoil like this, I would imagine that big players, people we might not expect, transfer requests could start to be handed in, boys. Like people look after themselves, but I don't think that Kieran Tierney's one of them. I think that he is one of these people who feel a sense of responsibility to get the club back to where it belongs. But Ryan, the man that you've defended and that I've sort of been questioning throughout this podcast, in comparison to that interview with Kieran Tierney, Mikel Arteta spoke after this game, and not only this game's post-match interview aggravated me, but the one against Wolves, the one against Leeds, any difficult result. And it's the fact that he comes out and actually praises the players for that display. Red card or not, I don't think we win that game. We didn't look like scoring. It was negative. It was disjointed. I've described our playing style like watching a game of snooker. It's like individual.
After half time,
maybe that early shot goes in instead of bouncing directly off of Pope. That what was it, Lacazette's shot on a rebound? Yeah. Maybe that changes the game, but I have to agree with Owen.
What evidence is there? Like, yeah, we've seen decent play, but in terms of our finishing ability or ability to pull the defense, I agree with you. That 10-minute spell was good in comparison to the rest of the game, but it was more aggravating that he talked about crossing numbers again, about the positivity of our progress, and like, to me, he just looked delusional talking about that after a game like that. What did you make of it? In comparison with someone like Tierney's assessment?
Look, Arteta's got a different job in that respect to Tierney, because Tierney, I think, is as good as it is that he said the right things. I think he's a lot easier for him. What I would say to you, Owen, is that, and I've seen managers do it, when we beat Fulham 3-0 at the start of the season, the post-match interview with Arteta wasn't him praising the squad. It was him saying what we should be doing better. Yes, we scored 3, but we also did this. We should have done that better. We need to improve. We're not there yet. We need to keep. So when we're on top and when we're winning, that's what managers do a lot of the times. That's when you'll get your real assessment of a manager. You look at, there's other evidence of managers who are doing that now. But when things aren't going well, I know it's frustrating to hear him saying some of that stuff, because myself, who's a big fan, is like, well, That's not the case, isn't it? That's not why. But there is a duty for him to protect some of his players.
Mm-hmm.
You can't throw all of these under the bus because
because
he's going to be there. He's going to be there He's going to be there today. He'd have probably been at that training ground at 8 a.m. with them, and it's just like you can't. I can understand. Me personally, I can understand why he's not yet. He's going to be there. Look at Freddie.
Mm-hmm.
When he knew that last game was his Everton one last year, he told everyone he Ozil out the squad when usually out.
See, that's where
it's a lot easier to do that when you on the next day aren't having to pick up the mess, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and see, this is where we're going to start to sort of dissect some of the decision making, because this is, and again, I'm not asking just throwing little snidey questions. I think it's good because, again, 100%, I wanted him to succeed. He's so likable. I was so behind him, but over the last 2 weeks, probably, is once I've drifted off. And Mike, I'm going to keep putting the questions across the line, and you just jump in whenever, because I think it's good to ask a person, because I think you're probably in a similar mind frame to me. Maybe you're not as harshly vocal about it. But
no, we invited Ryan on to get his opinions because I knew that they would be slightly different than ours at this point, and they're being argued well.
Yeah. But Ryan, when you look at the some of the state of the club in general, I know we can talk about the board and talk about recruitment, and this is a long-term project, but we can't just cast aside current form and the current state of the club. And let's just go through the mole, the leak from the club, leaking training ground bus stops between players. Apparently it's come out, whether confirmed or not, it's just speculation, but that David Luiz and Mikel Arteta aren't even on speaking terms at the minute. You said he can't throw players under the bus. I would respectfully disagree and say that he has thrown players under the bus, including Nicola Pepe, Matteo Guendouzi, Thomas Partey, and whether it was right or wrong, yesterday evening he threw Granit Xhaka under the bus again. And I just think that there's...
What was he supposed to say, though?
There's a lot of stuff here, and my question to you, like the Ozil, exile, Saliba, all these things, is Mikel Arteta, has Mikel Arteta been too heavy-handed for such an inexperienced manager?
For me, no, and that's based on the fact that what we talked about from before about this squad not being what I think. I think there's more problems in this. When we talk back to that Unai Emery thing, that we spoke about at the start. What did he say about Mesut Ozil? He said after that game in Baku, he told every single player to come back for a one-on-one with the manager. Who was the one player who didn't come back? Is Mesut Ozil. And I'm saying this, Eoin, as a big fan of Mesut Ozil. I loved him in that 2015-16. I appreciate what he's done.
I liked Andy back in 2016. That doesn't really translate to today, though, right?
No, he's been a fantastic player, but there's no way, there's absolutely no way that his influence in the dressing room is a positive one. No. Not when things aren't going his way. I'll tell you what, Eoin. Go. There's an Aaron Ramsey interview, on the internet, and it's quite a jokey one. I think it's with Soccer AM or something. And they say, so they ask him, who's the sort of the teacher's pet? And he says Ozil, and he says now and again he'll get days off and things like that. If you're trying to change the culture of a football club, you can't allow things like that to happen, right? So if when Arteta says, I'm okay with what's happening with Ozil, because I know in my mind I have given Ozil every single chance to sort of, come in the group and be the player that I want him to be. And when someone like Arteta says that, I personally much rather listen to what Mikel Arteta says than what Mesut Ozil will say via his agent through a social media post having a go. I mean,
but when you take all the other factors into it, Mandy, what do you reckon of there's obviously It's more. There's more drama at Arsenal than there is in a fucking episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians at the minute. It's just every single week there seems to be something coming out, and surely that means that there's sort of unrest in the dressing room, if you will. You know, I honestly think, in my opinion, that I think he's lost the senior members of the squad, and I think that the exclusion not only of Mesut Ozil, of Socrates, and no matter what you think about Socrates as a player, apparently he's massively popular within the dressing room. And when I say that he's making sort of heavy-handed decisions, I mean that to exclude Socrates and exclude Ozil, yes, you didn't have to play them, but with the likes of Gabriel Martinelli being out until this late in the year and Pablo Mari, they were unsure whether he would have been fit to feature this side of Christmas. There was room for them players in the squad. That was a statement, and I just think that Mikel Arteta, whilst I loved him and thought how exciting the prospect of him coming in was, he hadn't earned the right to be that heavy-handed yet.
And see, I think, you know, pulling back the curtain, I haven't been to prison like Mike has, but
It's true.
I've heard
Yes.
when you go to prison on your first day, you're supposed to fight the biggest guy, right? Because you want to lead, like you want everyone to know. Like, for me, I have no problems with Arteta going into this locker room and calling out the two big dogs and saying, "Sit the fuck down, I'm the manager." And by doing that, if that's removing them from the squad, so be it. Because we have such a young squad that if Arteta's looking at them saying, "Here's how I need to mold these young kids, and here's how I need them to know I'm the leader and I'm the alpha," I'm going to fuck up the two big dogs in the room, right? Because then the young kids step back and they go, "Oh, this guy doesn't fuck around." So I have no problem with the way Arteta is doing the disciplinary and stuff. What bothers me is our players care more about fucking social media than any other team in the league. You never see players from Liverpool and City posting on their Instagram stories all the bullshit our players do. Why? Because they're focused in their training. And so we just have a culture problem. And for people to say that's Arteta's fault, that's bullshit, because he hasn't been around long enough for that to be the problem. We need to cut some of these assholes loose.
But when you say that it's not Arteta's problem, there's stuff like the interviews, like the refusal to change the lineup. I know you said earlier, Ryan, about, you know, maybe options being limited and the squad being bad, but that doesn't, I don't think, justify the persistence to keep picking the same squad. Like,
I wonder if there's pressure from above. I wonder if there's pressure from above to say, we're paying these stars, you're going to play these stars, right?
Well, I actually mentioned that I actually would not be at all surprised if there was a stipulation within Willian's contract to say that he has to be guaranteed a certain amount of appearances every season. It has to be. That would be hard. It has to be.
I don't think that there is, but I do think the fact that he was brought in on the wages that he was, and that
there's an incentive there for them.
There's this subconscious need to show that this was a good transfer to make.
Does anyone know what the Aubameyang goal drought is? Like how many matches it's been?
In open play since Fulham, 12.
12
since United.
I'm not including a penalty and not including the goal he scored yesterday.
You know what sucks about this whole thing though? Like, if you look back, because I was Googling it. So Henry's was 7, right? Mm-hmm. That was his longest goal drought. But the big difference was other players around him scored. And so when you're the striker,
had secondary scoring for a while.
Exactly. So when you're the striker and you're on a drought, but other people are scoring, you don't feel nearly as bad. With Aubameyang, it's like you're not scoring. No one else is scoring. We're not even putting shots on target. You're wearing the captain's armband when you shouldn't be. And it's just like, so.
And the pressure is compounding, and he is not one to break out of that without some random.
While some of Arteta's comments are a little like you question what he's saying, then you also hear him in post-match where he's speaking directly to Pierre through the media, just being like, "You're overthinking it. Just stop." So I think he's a good manager. It's just, I think his hands might be tied by the people above him. I truly do.
Mm-hmm. It's like I mentioned earlier. I think there's a massive sort of accumulation of toxicity within our club at the minute, from board level right down to the dressing room itself. But in my opinion, this is a results-driven business, and as we mentioned before, the squad we have is better than we're playing at the minute. I don't care what anybody says. The standard to which we are playing is not acceptable, and like every fucking job, you have to be accountable for the performances, and that's Mikel Arteta's job. And I think that if this was Unai Emery or this was anybody else, and he wasn't one of our players, and he hadn't have won that FA Cup, given our current run of form, I think any other club, put it like this: if this was Chelsea, or this was Man United could be a bad example at the minute, to be honest with you. If this was Liverpool, City, given this current run of form in our league position, would they keep Mikel Arteta in a job?
I think they would. Personally, I said it on TGT. Like, again, he's been here for about a year, and I understand that we were better under Emery to start last season, but these are the same players with 4 managers who have failed. We have to give him time to bring in his own squad. This summer, he gets a windfall of cash through wages being released. Financial fair play will balance in our favor. I know a lot of it's a joke, but
it is a joke.
It is, but we're going to have so much cash. So like, for people to go like, oh, let's fire him after one transfer window. Like, yeah, dude hasn't even had 2 windows yet.
Well, look at this. Apparently, we'll put it like this, Andy. This is my concern. He was the person who drove the Willian deal. He's the one who identified him and said, "I want that player." Okay,
because he was free.
Do you? Was he? I would say that with signing on bonuses and the wages for 3 years.
But again, like that's all in the wage packet, right? We didn't have to pay a transfer fee. We couldn't afford anyone else. So let me ask you this, right? Let me ask you this, right? So I say to you, I'm like, don't name players. I'll go over. Everyone can say yes or no. I'll say to you this: like, you can have a Premiership player with proven experience towards the end of his career who's won titles, or we can invest £1 million in maybe an unknown quantity from the lower leagues. You're always going to take that first option. And so,
yeah,
but
Willian, but see, there's other factors you have to take into account. You can't just say fucking blank player and blank player. It has to be, this player is 32. The wage demands are going to be about 350 grand a week with no sell-on value. This other player is an exciting young prospect of this age in this position. We had already invested £72 million in a winger in that position, and for me, my worry is do I trust? Because in my opinion, going into the January window, now you're going to see a cash injection that we were likely to see in the summer. I think that the club will panic and try to back him. But do you trust Mikel Arteta with that money? Mikel
Arteta didn't sanction the £76 million transfer of Pepe.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, for me, if you look at the 3 players that he sanctioned were Partey.
He called time on him, basically, though.
Gabriel and Willian.
Willian.
Yeah. Willian came in for £100,000 a week plus all of his additional clauses. So you're getting a proven player for very cheap that can step in. I agree with what Mike was saying on TGT and Price said on here. The craziness is that Willian is continuing to play week in and week out when we know he shouldn't be, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, Nelson should have stepped in. Smith Rowe should have stepped in. But I don't think it's a bad sanction transfer. Ryan, what do you think? You're awfully quiet, Ryan. I came in here to rescue you, bro.
Yeah. No, I'm listening to you. That's why.
God help you.
You know what? My personal opinion is I don't think we know as fans enough about that last transfer window. When you look at it, Raul Saniel, he went midway through it. Mm-hmm. And Edu stepped up, and the last day you see that when they're having those pictures with Party, there's about 20 people there. There's Vinay, there's now then Arteta's his role got changed from head coach to man. I don't personally know what was clear. So if you're going to give Willian under Arteta, then you have to, in my opinion, say then he signed Gabriel and Partey. Now, if we were to sign the equivalent centre attacking midfielder of Partey and the equivalent striker or right back of Gabriel, if you know what I'm saying, in that kind of quality, and that I'd be delighted personally in Jan. So I don't know exactly now. As things that are now, we know that Edu and Arteta do the transfers together. So in my opinion, that allows us to critique it better going forward. So like, for example, in January, and if Arteta lasts to the summer, which I really hope he does, if he gets that summer, we know, and things carry on in the current, as they are in the current the current model, then we know that. So then every player comes in who does well, who doesn't do well, that's on them. Mm-hmm. Whereas in that summer, there was a lot of, who was the link to Kia, that other, it was that Edu, or it was just a bit cloudy for me. So I can't really say exactly.
Yeah. But Matthew says here, isn't it Arteta's job to maximise our assets instead of running them down, Pepe being the main one? And see that this is these next two questions are sort of open to everybody here, because I'd like to hear everybody's opinion on this. And look, I'm not this much of a negative nonce every fucking week. Okay, I'm sort of playing devil's advocate a bit, and I'm trying to push some of the questions that I've seen on the social media platforms too. Given our current form, I understand, and I've always said I hope he makes it to January. That's what, because I think if we're going to see a change in Mikel Arteta, it's going to be through incoming players. I don't think he can do it with this crop of players, in my opinion. And I think if he makes it to January and he gets the backing, we could possibly see Mikel Arteta turn this around. But my worry is that will he make it to January? Because we have Southampton, who are on absolute fire at the minute, great footballing side. Then we have Everton with Chelsea on Boxing Day. And in my opinion, I struggle to see us picking up a point from them three fixtures. And I think that put it like this: if we lose against Southampton and Mikel Arteta is sacked by Arsenal, I can't complain. I can't, because as much as I personally want to see him succeed, it's a results-driven business. And like I said earlier, people have to be accountable for the poor results. But the question here is, and I've seen people put this up, the old classic saying of, they're too big of a club to go down. But realistically, lads, if we continue on this run of form, mathematically, any other season maybe, but this, we're in a relegation fight. Do you think that it's possible that we could see Arsenal battling to stay out of those bottom three places this season?
No. Dude, so let me ask you this, Owen, and I know you were trying to be devil's advocate, but
you just ended up being just the devil. That's it.
Yes. Say we lose to Southampton and Arteta gets fired, right? We bring in a new manager. So this new manager comes in, spends the first 6 months getting the players up to snuff, right? Then we're in we're in June. Goes through a transfer window where maybe he can get some players out, maybe he can't. And then next Christmas was shit again because we have the same group. Then we're just looking at recycling players. I think we need to judge Arteta on this transfer window coming up if he's backed by the board, and then in the summer when we release 4 or 5 players and we get this windfall of cash. So I don't think just being that roller coaster team of bringing in new managers and giving them transfer kitty, it just doesn't happen. So for me, looking at this table, right, if we win 2 matches, we're top half. We're knocking on the door.
But that's the thing. When you get down to 14th through 16th, I mean, not that I really know this from experience, but I mean, in those areas, it's a lot harder to fall down into 18th than it is to get up to 7th.
Yeah,
but you really have to absolutely just not even draw games anymore.
But they're not positives, lads. And tell me, I would like to hear from somebody, and I mean a convincing argument, not just what we think or what we have a feeling might happen, but somebody, if you can give me a bit of evidence to say that we will increase our form. What's the solution?
Can someone scroll up whoever's camera or screen this is?
That's awful when we have to scroll up.
Scroll up, because I read something yesterday, a statistic that Chelsea haven't beaten a team above them in the league yet this season, but where are they in the table?
They're 6th, I think.
Now, I'm assuming that's true because it came from a friend of mine who is a Chelsea supporter who just said, because there's a lot more Arsenal in this group than Chelsea, and he just said, listen, like it doesn't matter who you're beating, right? That you're winning. So ultimately, like for me, 3 or 4 good wins over the Christmas period puts us into the top 10, and then this doesn't really it's a moot point, right?
But 3 or 4 good wins, Andy. Where are they coming from? Who can we realistically beat out of Southampton, Everton, and Chelsea, all on current form?
Well, that's just it. Like if you like sum up Arsenal's season right now is Burnley perfect. Look at the statistics. Look at the red card. Look at the scoreline, and we're like, yeah, this is Arsenal. But and we can beat all these teams in front of us.
Look, if we lose to Brighton and West Brom,
City.
if we lose to Brighton and West Brom, then okay, maybe we could actually be in a relegation scrap. But
here's the deal, though. Like yes, our form is shitty, but we can beat all these teams in front of us. Easily beat those teams. It can turn around very quick.
I wish I had your positivity.
Dude, I'm not positive. Here's what I would do, guys. If I were Mikel Arteta on Wednesday, the team that faced who did we last play in the Dirk?
Hey, that's my local.
Dunfermline, I think.
Yeah, like sorry, I don't speak Irish, but just start that team. Just put that team out.
Oh, fuck.
This is what you would end up with. This is what you would end up if we start if we go for that lineup.
Did you buy stock in Jab? Because no one's used that since 2005.
He is flat out on that fucking thing, man. He's a torture.
Every day I get like 4 jabs.
It's fucking 2015. Ryan, hypothetical. It's a hypothetical here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I know, again, I'm going to turn positive at the end of this, I promise you.
Yeah.
But we go out, we lose to Southampton, we lose to Everton, we lose to City in the Cup, and then we lose to Chelsea on Boxing Day. Where would you stand at that stage?
I would still keep with it because I'm very much on his side. I mean, having said that, you know, I'm actually I'm thinking about the.
Doesn't matter how we lose.
Reaction.
Doesn't matter how we go out and how we lose.
That personally, I think, could be too strong for him to survive. But having said that, I think that this board, Edu and Vinay, are very much behind Arteta. And I think we saw last year that when, I think, as you said, Owen, because Emery certainly wasn't as popular as Arteta, I think you could have argued that Emery could have gone earlier.
Yeah.
He didn't. Emery went when it was impossible for him to carry on. So I think the board will try their best, but I'm just be really surprised if we lose all 3. I have to be honest, because that would be losing like almost 6 out of 8 games or 7 out of 8 games or something.
We've lost 7 of our last 12.
So we've lost 7 out of 12. So if we were to lose, that would basically mean
we'd have 4 wins. We'd have 4 wins at the midpoint of the season.
It's just it's hard to see at the minute.
It's horrible.
I think we'll get something in at least 2 of those games.
I suppose to round up my thoughts on it, I'm in 2 minds because in all seriousness, on one hand, I am like yourself, Ryan. He's so likable, and I think much like a Serge Gnabry, like only in manager form. I think that we could look in 5 years' time and look back and say, why didn't we stick with him? Because Arteta has progressed to be one of the best coaches in the world, and maybe we jumped out too soon and didn't show him enough faith. But on the other hand, I'm saying to myself, there's very, very, very worrying signs. But what we have to remember, like you just said, with Vinay, with the Cronkies, with Edu, they took a risk in appointing Mikel Arteta in the first place. They knew that this was a rookie manager that was going to make mistakes along the way, and I think they would look stupid now if they were to pull the trigger this early. whether I think it's right or it's wrong. And
And
then,
who-
oh yeah, go ahead.
if he did, let's say they did do that, who would you get in to
This is
deal with that situation?
This is where I was coming to, because this is the other side of my brain, a very, very limited and small brain that it is. It's the other side of it. But
Yeah.
if it was me, I would be looking to appoint probably a short-term solution to get us sort of back on track until we can get the right candidate, the likes of a Nagelsmann. He isn't going to come in this situation, but I think somebody like a Rafa Benitez could maybe steer the ship and steady it out a bit. But the only thing I would say is that, in my opinion, if they were going to go down that avenue of somebody like a Rafa Benitez to steady the ship, they should do it now so that he has time to assess the squad and then acquire what he needs in January. Hasenhüttl as well as another manager, I think, would probably be quite exciting. But realistically, do you want to know what? Pochettino as well. I like him, and I would
He's
just
not he's
not going to come. Of course, he's not going to come. I'm just saying what I like. Jesus, man, Jesus.
Just but this is where I think you have to be careful as a football club, because I don't think it should necessarily be what Rafa Benitez would want that he gets, because I could see him wanting people like, Eriksen, sort of like the Willians, people who I think that you need to try and identify players more like Gabriel and Partey between sort of the ages of 21 to 26, long term. I'm not saying if Rafa Benitez, let's say you brought him in and he really wanted a player, I wouldn't say not get him just because he doesn't fit in, but I'm saying that's why I quite like Arteta, because there's a long-term vision with it. They're probably, what really alarmed me about that Unai Emery interview that I told you about before was that Unai Emery said in that interview he wanted Zaha because he had seen him play, but not just because he had seen what he did, because he met him. And when he met him, he was even more convinced by him. Apparently, when we signed Pepe, they didn't, according to that interview, they didn't know Pepe's character. Does that not seem crazy to you, to spend £75 million on a player and you don't know? Like, I would imagine in the modern day scouting, and even just based on some of the stuff I know that happened from QPR, you find out about how the person is off the field.
Yeah,
that's the first thing you would want to find out. I mean, you can watch games, but if you're gonna make that kind of an investment in somebody and not talk to people around him or his coach at the club before he got to Lille, I mean, whatever that was, then what are we doing?
No,
I agree with that, 100%.
Yeah, it's a difficult.
What Emery said, we don't know, but I'm just saying, if that interview is accurate, then for me the alarm bells are ringing, because I just don't. I feel like you need to know every single thing about a player, especially in this modern day age, and especially when you produce such money for them.
Yeah, it's big Baldy, big Steve. It's going to be a difficult time, man. And do you want to know what? I've never found myself confused. Is probably the best word for it. I don't know what I want, and I don't know how to fix it. As a football.
And you don't have to. I mean, like this whole thing where you have to have just a take and then back it for to the hilt one way or the other, and use it as a weapon. I mean, it's not necessary. That's why I like I like having these conversations, because this is satire, okay, but it's an expression of the fact that I just don't know what the answer is. So, like, theoretically speaking, I would just blow it up and start from scratch. But I'm not calling for Arteta's head yet.
No, and I think to turn around and categorize yourself in, like, say, for example, as a 30-year-old, you're turning around and you're saying, I'm in the Arteta in camp or the Arteta out camp. Like, just fucking have a bath with a toaster, you prick.
I never once. Andy can tell you this, but I mean, we started doing our podcast in 2016, and so we had the final year and a half or 2 years of Arsene Wenger's tenure.
Yeah,
I never once spoke the words Arsene out, even after I thought it was time to make a change, because I just think that whole That whole concept is
In
just
the 12 years I've known
It's-
Mike, I've
look-
only ever known him to say someone out once, and that was Trump.
well, yeah, I'll do that all day long. But
I keep getting the image. I'm finished my questions, by the way, so I'm just talking nonsense. But I keep getting the image of you, a 55-year-old man, then around 55, playing arts and crafts on your living room floor, making that T-shirt where you're supposed to be like playing with your kids, paying attention to your wife.
my kids is trapped in the basement with
aggressively
COVID right
yelling
now, so I
words
can't
to
believe
Twitter.
You probably don't want to say that on the internet, Mike.
You're the guy that was screaming about how much of a fan you were of that Swiss team.
Hey, where are the bedazzled things on there? Like, why don't you get really into it?
They're on the back.
Yeah, spruce it up and start selling it, because there's no other Arsenal YouTubers that are selling any sort of out merch at the minute. We should hit that.
New Patreon level.
Yeah,
Customized T-shirts.
Well, we need a new way of Ryan. It should come as no surprise that we had 3 of our podcasts residing on the servers of a website that recently had to take down a lot of videos.
R.I.P.
And so we need a new source of revenue, because that this show is all about and we have not gotten anyone to sign up for our Patreon yet at £9,999 a month.
Absolute bullshit.
Yeah, I went to business school, and I've never struggled as much as I am right now trying to figure out how we're going to get rich off of this podcast. I mean, clearly the content is such that we should be able to find a way.
For fuck's sake.
Hey, speaking of content, did Adidas not drop that line of clothing this morning, or
No,
what?
they did. They have no shame whatsoever. It was dropped.
It was a good advert, though, to be fair. It was good.
That was a great advert.
I mean, that is an interesting question, though. I mean, like Ryan, does that frustrate you? Like the separation of the marketing wing, and there was a thread on Twitter. I forget who it was that did it, but it wasn't a guy with like a huge account.
Yeah.
About Arsenal Marketing Club as opposed to Arsenal Football Club, and let's finish with this, because this is really kind of the last thing that will drive me into the ground. But the Arsenal Twitter admin is not an Arsenal supporter, and the reason for that more than likely is because that person couldn't bring themselves to do the kind of nice, happy tweets that are necessary a day. I mean, it would be like, buy our goddamn merchandise if you've got money to burn, but otherwise I wouldn't do it if I were you. I mean, like, does it feel too much like a commercialized club at this point? And I mean, is that I think that's probably a self-explanatory statement, but I mean, do you get annoyed when you see in the juxtaposition of a performance on the pitch yesterday and then, but we got this great new Adidas gear?
Do you know what? It does annoy me, but I guess because I've worked in even QPR, who are not even close to being as big as Arsenal. They're just commercial thing that you have to do. You have to hit you have to. Unfortunately, it's not just about the football. There's other aspects of the club that you have to market, you have to support. And that even sometimes the people at QPR, you just knew that it wasn't the right thing to do, but you had to do it. So I don't like it.
Laurie's right. It's actually tomorrow. They wanted to wait a day so that all of the podcasts could get out of their systems, and then
it's really annoying, because now I feel like an absolute wanker going to buy it, because man, it looks good. It does.
Look, the first thing I'm doing tomorrow morning is I'm going to wake up. I'm going to see if they have anything in my size, and I'm probably going to buy it. So I mean, like, look,
or you can
I'm not going to find anything, but
or you can make it yourself.
This is actually going to be in the this is actually it's QPR colors too. So and if you still have contacts at the club, I'll drive this over to White City myself.
At the Loftus Road, trust me.
I will drive this over to White City myself, and so. All right. Well, I think that's. Owen, have we exhausted any level of
I'm tapped
Do we
out,
feel
man.
any better? Because
I'm tapped out,
normally
but
I
I
feel
feel-
better at the end of the podcast.
I feel like I owe Ryan an apology because you're obviously a very nice man, and I've come on here and just basically debated you the whole time.
You've been a negative Nancy.
Other people on. Other people have.
If you
Your
were to
views.
rank Arsenal podcasts on like how much of a positive spin just naturally they are, we would probably be near the top. And so that the fact that that the rants are I mean, this is just a sign of a club in disarray. And
Look,
we appreciate you coming on to.
It could be Owen that you were right. In whatever 6 months, it could be that you were right and I was wrong about Arteta. I just think that
And if he is, he's going to drive to your house and like hold
No,
up signs.
I hope I'm wrong because there's way too many fucking assholes on football Twitter and football YouTube that have had this point of view from the start, and I don't like them.
Yeah.
So,
we don't need them. We don't need them. I mean, they may end up being right in the end, but that doesn't mean that they were justified all on whatever. I did, Jared. I did. Everyone out, everyone in. I don't care what you do. Dance around in a circle. At this point, I have zero control over what happens at Arsenal Football Club. So I'm going to keep watching and keep rooting for us starting on Wednesday. So I think we'll leave it there. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Twice in 2 weeks, you add a level of class and credibility to this podcast that we literally have none of. So we appreciate it. We'll see you again in a couple days. No, Owen, thanks for doing the yeoman's job of hosting once again.
I'd say it was a pleasure. It wasn't really. I just sort of insulted a lot of people and made everybody feel bad, but. Somebody has it here. Can you put the picture of Andy up first? Andy, do smile at the camera for a second, buddy.
I'm not doing the
before we go.
What's her face?
Where did it go?
All right, fine, I'll do it.
It's been 7 hours and 15 days. You look so like her.
All right, folks. We'll try to enjoy the rest of your Hanukkah.
Does that turn you auto?
Oh, you don't know what I'm going to do after this stops.
All right. Well, I think that's about it. Come on, you Gooners.
Yo, grab a dreidel and